Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Horror Fan 88 channel. I'm back once again with another video here today to do a response video to a tag. So this tag is the ABCs of Horror created by my good buddy Hellhound from the horror&metal channel. So pretty much you give your favorite horror movie for every letter of the alphabet. Pretty cool. I really liked that. He left the tag open for anyone to respond to it. And, Hellhound and I definitely have a lot of very similar answers and a lot of the same picks. But, great minds think alike, with a lot of these. But with that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into it. Starting off with A, I'm going to have to agree and go with American Werewolf in London. It's a fantastic film with an amazing transformation scene, incredible special effects, fun soundtrack. Overall, just a really cool movie. It's got a nice little bit of comedy in there as well. But yeah, really cool characters. When it comes to werewolf films, I'd still say my personal favorite is The Howling. But it's very close. This one is excellent. So, the American Werewolf in London, excellent film. For B, I'm going to go with Bride of Reanimator. Of course, the sequel to one of my favorites, Reanimator. You got Jeffrey Combs back as Herbert West, and it's just pure fun, entertaining, gross shit, pretty much. It's Herbert West once again doing his experiments, except this time he's trying to create new life, hence the Bride of. And it's gross, it's insane, fun practical effects. It's just really cool to see Jeffrey Combs back as Herbert West again. This is one of my favorite trilogies of all time, and this is a very underrated sequel. So, Bride of Reanimator. For C, I actually had three choices with this one, and I just kept going back and forth, but overall I went with City of the Living Dead, directed by Lucio Fulci. This is a personal favorite Italian horror film of mine, one of the first I ever saw, but I was also either deciding to go with Creepshow or Child's Play, but I went with City of the Living Dead. It's a disgusting zombie movie. Lucio Fulci, pretty much known as the Italian godfather of gore. This film is disgusting, but that's why I love it. Italian horror films are just insane, and a lot of them just won't make sense overall, but just go with it and have a good time. Yeah. City of the Living Dead, of course, a part of his Gates of Hell trilogy, City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, and House by the Cemetery. And this film, it's awesome. For D, of course, gonna have to agree, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Classic zombie film, classic horror film in general. You actually had Dario Argento be a part of this film, and it definitely has that kind of Italian horror flavor on it. And I believe even Goblin did the score for it, which they did a lot of Dario Argento's films for the score. Tom Savini, doing the zombie effects this time around. And yeah, cool characters. I love the setting in the mall. I think that's a really cool place to set this film. And it's definitely my personal favorite of the Romero films. His zombie films. So, Dawn of the Dead. E, of course, gonna have to go with one of my absolute favorite movies ever, Evil Dead 2. Ash Williams is my favorite movie character of all time, played by Bruce the Man Campbell. And this film is just a masterpiece in every way. Now, I love everything Evil Dead. The original film is fantastic. This is fantastic. Army of Darkness is a shit ton of fun. But yeah, great practical effects, great demons, and yeah, just more Bruce Campbell being absolutely insane in this movie. But yeah, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. F, here we have Fright Night from 1985, my favorite vampire film of all time. Now, funny enough, a lot of my answers are also like some of my favorite movies of all time, but I'm not going to say which ones because eventually I'm going to do my top 10 favorite horror films. But Fright Night, I mean, what can you say about it? Absolutely spectacular horror comedy with an excellent cast, insane practical effects, fun soundtrack. I mean, yeah, this movie's so much fun in every sense of the word. I could watch it every day, never get tired of it. And yeah, Fright Night. Welcome to Fright Night. For real. G, gonna have to agree once again. The Gate. So this is one that I watched back when I was a kid and just had a whole lot of fun with. You got Stephen Dorff in here, which I believe it was his first film role. But it's fun. You know, it's a demon movie, but it's kind of like the demons are along the lines of like ghoulies. You know, like they're little demon minions running around. But it's a cool movie that I just don't really hear a whole lot about. I got The Gate 2, which is a fun sequel. But yeah, the original The Gate, it's just a whole lot of fun. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Fun, stop motion, and yeah. So for H, I mean, this is rather obvious, isn't it? Halloween from 1978, my favorite movie of all time. I know I don't have to say too much about this because I've talked about this movie ad nauseum. But it's a, great movie. John Carpenter, Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, Charles Cyphers. Hell yeah. Halloween. For I went with John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. Really underrated film here. It's got a great story. You have this author, Sutter Kane, who, whoever reads his books end up going crazy, but he ends up, disappearing. So they send Sam Neill's character and Julie Carmen to go find him. And they end up in a fictional town from the books, and it really makes your mind go, and you're just like, what is happening? Great performances by Sam Neill, and yeah, if you haven't seen In the Mouth of Madness, I won't spoil anything, but check it out. I think it's probably Carpenter's most underrated horror film. For J, I just went ahead and went with Jeepers Creepers, same thing as Hellhound. I haven't watched this movie in a long time, but I remember very much enjoying it. The Creeper had a cool look to him, and I really liked the brother-sister duo in this film. But, yeah, Jeepers Creepers. For K, of course, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's a fun movie. This is another one that I haven't watched in years, but it's fun. You got the clowns. One of the cops gets turned into a ventriloquist dummy. You got pies in the face and just absolute madness. But yeah, it's a PG-13 horror film, much like The Gate, but they still are very fun and enjoyable. But yeah, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. For L, of course, I had to go with my second favorite vampire film, The Lost Boys. This was another one that I'm pretty sure I wore the VHS tape out. I watched it so much. It's a great film. You have amazing characters in the film. You got a great soundtrack. The vampire effects, they look really cool. Yeah. The Lost Boys is so much fun. You got Corey Feldman, Corey Haim, Jason Patrick, Kiefer Sutherland. Just an absolute blast of a film in every sense of the word. Anyway, The Lost Boys. For M, Maniac from 1980, a very unsettling slasher film, kind of a character study too. But yeah, Joe Spinell in this movie as the character Frank Zito is just a traumatized psychopath, and it's very unsettling. This is not a slasher movie that you would watch for fun, because it really takes a dive on his psyche, and just insane movie with crazy gore effects by, once again, Tom Savini. I know probably one of the most famous things from this movie is the shotgun blast to the head. Next up we have N, and I'm going to go with Night of the Demons. Another one that I watched on repeat that I have such a blast with every time I watch it. Fun characters. I love the setting. This film takes place on Halloween night, and they go to the abandoned funeral parlor known as Hull House to have a Halloween party. Eventually, a demon gets set free. Everybody's getting possessed. Chaos ensues. You got a kick-ass rock and metal soundtrack. So much fun from this 1988 cult classic. And the demon effects, too, by Steve Johnson are excellent in this film. Night of the Demons is such a blast. Next up, for O, we have, of course, The Omen. Great film. You know, I haven't watched this one in years as well, but, you know, you got Gregory Peck in here. And one thing that I've always remembered from this movie was the scene with the nanny, and she's like, "It's all for you, Damien," and she hangs herself and goes through the window. But yeah, Damien, the son of Satan. Crazy movie. And also the beheading with the glass, too. But for P, I went with the original Phantasm. Now, this is another one that I kind of was going back and forth between this or Psycho, but I wanted to give it to Phantasm. It's just such a good movie, and it's one that I saw back when I was a kid, and it made me feel weird. I was like, what is this movie? Because it really didn't make sense. But, you know, Don Coscarelli directed it. Very low-budget film. But I just love everything about it. And I love the second one. The second one's a whole lot of fun. But I go with the first one just for pure the horror and the creepiness that this movie has. The score is beautifully haunting. The characters are great with Mike, Reggie, and Jody. And in my opinion, one of the most underrated horror icons of all time with the Tall Man, played by Angus Scrimm. Just fantastic. This film here is insane. You'd have to see it to believe it. Phantasm. For Q, this is one that I had a hard time with, and I guess I'm just going to agree with Hellhound and go with Q, the Weakened Serpent. I've only seen that movie once a long time ago, but it's the one that I could think of. So Q, the Weakened Serpent for Q. But for R, we have The Return of the Living Dead, my favorite zombie film of all time. Much like Night of the Demons, in my opinion, a fun cast. This has a fun punk rock soundtrack. You know, the zombies in this movie are damn near unkillable. You know, they run, they talk, you just can't kill them. A headshot won't do nothing. Like, chopping their bodies up will not do nothing. If you chop a zombie up in this movie, the freaking limbs will come after you. Great gore. It was directed by Dan O'Bannon. Yeah, this movie is one of the funnest horror comedies I have ever seen in my life, and it has one of my favorite movie posters right there. So, The Return of the Living Dead. For S, I went with Dario Argento's Suspiria, the first Italian horror film I ever saw. It blew me away when I watched it, and I felt like I opened a whole new door into horror, and I just started buying all Dario Argento's movies, and then Lucio Fulci, Mario Bava. This film is definitely an experience. You know, it's such a beautiful movie to look at, too. Very artsy. You know, the colors in this movie are a character in themselves. The incredible score by Goblin. It's essentially a witch movie. You know, you have the character Susie Bannion, who goes to the Tam Academy and finds out that there are a coven of witches. And it's insane. But it's a damn good movie. For T, of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course. This film is very disturbing. It feels documentary style. It feels extremely hot. You know, you could feel the heat in this movie. It's insane. You know, Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface is awesome. Great horror icon. Jim Sido as the cook, who later you find out his name is Drayton Sawyer. Yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, epic film, very disturbing, pretty crazy. For you, I just went with Urban Legend. I thought, you know, I couldn't really think of something right off the top of my head with a U, so I just went with this. It's a decent, you know, late 90s post-Scream slasher. You know, I really liked the concept, you know, a killer going around killing people in ways of urban legends. I thought that was a really cool idea. You know, yeah, of course you got recognizable horror actors in here. You got Brad Dourif, you got Robert Englund, Danielle Harris. Yeah, so definitely not one of the worst 90s slashers. Still pretty fun, honestly. For V, I went with John Carpenter's Vampires. I really dig the hell out of this movie. It's a fun vampire movie. You have James Woods as a vampire killer. You have Thomas Ian Griffith as the head vampire Valak. You have Terry Silver from Karate Kid 3 as the head vampire. Yeah, pretty cool effects. It almost feels like a Western vampire film, but overall, very fun. So, vampires. For W, I went with Witchboard, who tongue-tied like hell. The director, Kevin Tenney, who also directed Night of the Demons, directed this, I believe, 1 year before he directed Night of the Demons. Pretty cool movie. I really like this one. I grew up with it. Pretty much based around the Ouija board, or as they say in this movie, it's pronounced Ouija. But yeah, cool characters. I really like the villain of the movie. Got some cool atmosphere in here as well. And yeah, really dig the hell out of this movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Witchboard. For X, this one, I was once again just kind of stumped because I haven't seen, the newer movie that came out recently called X. So I went with X-Ray, the slasher film from the early 80s. Haven't seen it in a while, but from what I remember, it was a pretty good one. So X-Ray. I believe it's also called Hospital Massacre, but yeah. For Y, I went with You're Next. I have it on this pack thing here, but there it is. You're Next. Really cool modern slasher. You have a badass final girl in this movie who just absolutely obliterates people. But yeah, I remember when it came out, I thought it was a pretty damn cool movie. You have Barbara Crampton in there, which is always cool to see her. And I really enjoyed it. You're Next. And finally, for Z, gonna have to agree once again and go with the classic zombie film, Zombie. Once again, directed by Lucio Fulci. This movie is disgusting, but it is badass. You have some really cool, gnarly stuff in this movie. You have the one scene with the splinter of wood that slowly goes into the girl's eye. You have the iconic scene of a zombie fighting a shark underwater. And it was real too. I believe it was like a shark trainer in the zombie makeup actually wrestling a shark underwater. Insane. But yeah, really cool zombie film. So that is it for the ABCs of horror. Once again, this was created by Hellhound from the Horror and Metal channel. Definitely go to his channel and subscribe if you haven't already. And with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you enjoyed my answers. I did the best I could. But with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Peace.